unmuted, so take it away.
Amazing. Welcome. Can folks who are joining by Zoom hear me? Okay, great. Welcome to the March meeting of the Community Board to Manhattan Human Services Committee. My name is Ryder Kessler. I am sitting in for both our chair and our vice chair, who are both not here today. So I'm really the third string, having been promoted. Before we start with the agenda, which has two parts, which first will be a conversation with Councilmember Alexa Aviles about immigration in the city, and second would be a discussion of the Red Door Place. First, I'm vamping to just let more people join and maybe walk in, and we'll start with some introductions before we jump into the program.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Was she gonna come in person?
No, she's joining by Zoom.
Oh, okay.
Valerie, I think, okay, I promoted you to panels, great. Okay, so let's go around the table.
Janet Liff, full board member.
Keen Berger, board member.
Arturo Fernandez, board member.
And Zachary Kazaz, also a board member.
And then let's go to the screen, Ivy.
Did you introduce yourself?
You introduce yourself. My name is Ivy Kwan Arce. I'm a board member and I also chair the arts and culture at CB2.
Great. And I think we have our new board chair, Valerie. I don't know if you are, if you want to say hello, you don't have to.
Thanks for the shout out. I just here to watch.
It's very exciting. This is our first meeting under the new new administration. All right. I don't know that we have. Do we have folks from council member?
Yes.
Oh, we do.
Yeah, I'm trying to promote to panelists.
Great. So the first. Oh, great. Yes, Dean. Are you able to do it? The first item of business tonight is a discussion of immigration and protections for immigrants in New York. And Arturo is going to lead this section of the meeting, so I'm going to hand it over to him.
All right.
All right. Promoting.
Oh, there you go.
Good, very good. Well done, Arturo.
Awesome. There we go.
It's good all time today.
Awesome. Hi, Alexa. How's it going?
Hello. Good evening. How's everyone?
Very good.
We're doing great. I think you might have joined just after we all went around and introduced ourselves, but the short version is everyone around the table and Ivy on screen are members of the Human Services Committee here at CB2. Anyway, back to Arturo.
All right.
Great.
So I'll briefly introduce you, Alexa. I took a little bit of your bio from your website. So it's my honor to welcome Councilmember Alexa Aviles, who represents New York City's 38th District and is chair of the City Council Committee on Immigration. Throughout her career, Councilmember Aviles has been a tireless advocate for working class communities, leading legislation on environmental justice, NYCHA transparency, budget equity, and also taking firm stands against harmful cuts to vital city services. Before her time in elected office, she spent nearly 3 decades in the nonprofit and social justice philanthropic sectors, supporting organizations that defend human rights and empower marginalized communities. She's also a deeply engaged public school parent, community board member, and she has been community board member and citywide youth advocate. We're incredibly fortunate to have her here with us today to share her expertise, especially regarding immigration protections in New York. And we're excited for what we know will be an insightful and inspiring conversation. So please take it away, Councilmember Aviles.
Great. Thank you so much, Arturo. Thank you for the invitation to speak with you all today. I guess we're going to be talking today about the topic of sanctuary cities and sanctuary city laws for cities. So I'll run through a couple of high-level points and then happy to answer questions from you all. I'd love to be certainly more in dialogue. This situation is honestly changing every day. So I'll just kind of start and give you some background. And for those of you who may know this really well, apologies, but it's just a good kind of level setting conversation. So, our city sanctuary laws, right? Actually, sanctuary city does not have actually a legal definition. This term is generally used to describe a municipality that has policies that limit the government agency's efforts on behalf of federal government enforcement of immigration law. We see that cities that identify themselves as sanctuary cities often note to be safer cities. It shows that on average, some almost 40% fewer crimes are committed. Actually, 35.5 fewer crimes are committed per 10,000 people in the US compared to cities that don't have what is often referred to as sanctuary city policies. So the reason why we've had sanctuary city policies, and certainly New York City has a very, very long bipartisan history, over 40 years of sanctuary city policy. The reason why we have these group of policies is because they build trust between immigrant New Yorkers and city agencies. And we saw as a city, when immigrant New Yorkers are afraid of engaging in city services, right? It's everything from not reporting a crime to not engaging in our public health system, to not engaging in education. The costs are really high for us as a community. And so we saw that in order to make sure that everyone is safe, that we would engage in these policies that would tell immigrants, first of all, we won't talk about your status. Your status should have no bearing on how you use city services and how you engage. And in changing terms, we won't cooperate with immigration enforcement, right? That we would be focused on doing what we need to do as a city. So these policies, honestly, were created really as a safety mechanism and to build trust. And they were widely accepted. Like I said before, the first policy showed up with Mayor Koch back in 1989, when he issued an executive order limiting city agencies from disclosing immigrants' status. They continued on over the years, and under different speakers, the laws were strengthened where we were seeing kind of gaps. In 2014, former Speaker Melissa Viverito passed a set of laws that are currently around detainers for the NYPD and the Department of Corrections. At the time, what we were seeing was the city was spending millions and millions of dollars holding people way past their sentence dates and way past the time the city had the right to hold them, waiting for immigration enforcement to potentially pick up folks. The city realized at some point that not only was it expending millions of dollars, that this was not the right thing to do. And so a suite of laws were passed that are referred to as detainer laws that are part of this kind of sanctuary city policy group. So the policies also included at some point privacy issues, which honestly are important for all New Yorkers, regardless of immigration status. Protecting your data is critical. And so, these kind of suite of about 13 laws are what we refer to when we think about sanctuary city policies. Now, the last thing I'd say before I kind of describe a little bit of maybe some of those laws, and I can send you a written document that has them in their very wonky description, but important for everyone to know that under the 10th Amendment of the US Constitution, the federal government cannot force states or localities to participate in a federal program. This this amendment protection came out of actually a court case in 1997 called Prince versus the United States. And it was actually around, it was a case around gun purchasing. And based on the principles set forward in that case, we have this protection that federal governments cannot force states or localities to participate in federal programs. And so our sanctuary city policies are predicated on this 10th Amendment constitutional right. The last thing I'll say is New York City, I guess around the first Trump administration, when we strengthened our sanctuary city laws, we really, the city was very forward thinking and really put forward the most strongest sanctuary city policies actually in the country. As you know, our laws are often preempted by state and certainly by federal, and we pushed our city jurisdiction kind of to the edge of where we could ensure the most protection for people, including our city resources at that. And so New York City, I will say, was really leading the way from our colleagues across the country and pushing its jurisdictional ability to protect its folks as far as possible. So we have this collection of policies, right? I'll run through just a few of them, and I'm happy to send you. I don't know, Arturo, if you sent the documents that I had sent you around to the
Yes,
committee.
I can show them right now. I'll show them right now.
We can also include them in the record of the meeting and the notes, so they're included in the report.
Great. Yeah, so we've put together a bunch of different documents to help folks both understand the scope of the law, understand why these laws were created, why they are so important to us as a city, and why it's so important to protect community members. I guess I'll say, much of the law essentially says that New York City will prohibit the use of city resources that include employee time and city property to support immigration enforcement. And essentially we're saying our city will do the work of the city, not of the federal government. And so what you saw in what you heard earlier about the detainer laws was New York City was spending boatloads of cash on something that was the federal government's role and responsibility. And it decided this is not a good use of our dollars. And it undermines this notion of building trust with immigrant communities, right? If immigrant communities feel that New York NYPD is colluding with ICE and actually engaging in federal immigration enforcement, they would not call NYPD. And in fact, we've seen cases where folks have because of confusion around ICE and how they kind of perpetuate, they use, they lie and they use all these tricky tactics where they write police or they don't, or they're not identifiable to get people to talk with them. It becomes a very tricky situation. So if our community members feel like, oh, they see police and they think it's NYPD when they need help, they're not going to call NYPD. And so we have this challenge, right, of identification, of knowing who's who, so that folks can understand where the boundaries of their own rights are and the laws and who's representing who. So essentially our local law 228 is probably the biggest one, where it says, we prohibit the use of city resources and employee time and city property to support immigration enforcement. We also have detainer law. It's important to note among these laws that say And this is where unfortunately our mayor refuses to understand what our laws are. Where he goes on TV and says, I want to roll back sanctuary city policies because, you know, we're harboring criminals or we're not allowed to do anything with criminals. And that is just patently false. The law actually includes 177 violent or serious crimes. But what it says is that NYPD is not going to honor immigration detainer request unless it's accompanied by a judicial warrant. That you've heard, right? That you can't come into a school building unless you have a judicial warrant, right? That means it's signed by the judge. It's not an administrative warrant, which ICE kind of, you know, they throw administrative warrants around like candy. But the very few times actually go through with the protocol of a judicial warrant that they should be doing. So the law says you need a judicial warrant and an individual would have had to been convicted of one of 177 serious and violent crimes. Now, why this is different from what Eric Adams says on TV is Eric Adams is referring to allowing ICE to pick up people before they have been actually convicted of a crime. And what that is saying if you are accused of a crime, he wants to be able to collaborate with ICE and hand people over to ICE. Now, we reject that because we are a land of laws and due process. The same due process that the mayor himself is enjoying when accused of crimes, others should have as well. And so the detainer law does, in fact, if someone is committing a crime, and certainly a violent crime, and our system processes that violent crime, our city can, in fact, cooperate with ICE. So it's just patently false that his hands are tied and that we just letting criminals on the street. Like, there is a legal process there and people can go through that process and it will allow the New York City to collaborate. So those are kind of the two most important kind of parts of many of the laws that I think are often in the public sphere and often used, you know, in kind of ways to fearmonger among communities. We see from the Trump administration that this is not about criminals. It has never been about people breaking the law. This is about people who are not here, who are not US citizens. And in particular, it is about people that are here from certain countries, right? Because we are seeing this play out all over the country. Often ICE, in its short history, in its daily operations, picks up very little people actually that are engaged with the criminal system, with the criminal legal system. Often it's students overstay their visa, all manner of other things. Very small portion of their enforcement is actually going after criminals. And so this rhetoric that is being perpetuated at the federal level is patently untrue. And you can see it when you look at the statistics. You see it in the stories now all across the country. So it's really important for us to not get caught up in this bad immigrant, good immigrant, because it's very much premised on a lie. It's premised on xenophobia. And so, you know, I think those are important elements to kind of raise up. And you see it. You see people getting picked up who have been here 30 years and maybe never finished their process. Or maybe got a ticket for drinking in the street 30 years ago and nobody remembers. I could barely remember what I did yesterday. And they're immediately getting expedited deportation orders. So we're in a very difficult scenario because the federal government is clearly wanting to remove people. And they are, in fact, removing people. And just today, Tom Homan again made a comment that he wants they are insisting that Mayor Eric Adams do an executive order to get around our laws to put ICE on Rikers Island. And that if we do not do that, they already were holding the case against Eric Adams, but if we do not do that, that he would flood New York City streets with ICE agents. And herein we have more bullying tactics, has nothing to do with criminals. Again, this is a rogue racist agency that clearly just wants to remove people from our country. And then the last thing I'll say, because I'd love to answer questions if I can, is, our city economically, culturally, socially, politically, all depend on immigration and immigrants. Removing, and in fact, one of the scary things is the attempt to get the IRS to share data with the federal government is really frightening. There has always been a firewall there because immigrants contribute, and particularly undocumented people in our city and state contribute so much to our tax base. They pay more than the top 10%. The 1%ers actually of the richest people, undocumented people, pay more in taxes than they do. Removing this whole group of people from our tax base would bring very much economic devastation. We see labor shortages. I mean, Florida just is trying to introduce a bill because they're seeing reductions in the immigrant labor force to roll back child labor laws in Florida. It's insane. It's insane. I mean, you can't make it up. So I guess, I'll just say that for all these reasons, in addition to being the morally right thing to do, to being the historical legacy of our city, these are the reasons why we are fighting to maintain our sanctuary city policies and to protect New Yorkers, whether you've been here for 5 minutes or 50 years. It is all those reasons why we are fighting so hard. And I will continue to fight against the mayor, who continues to be very much a puppet of the federal administration around making threats to roll back sanctuary city policies. And last thing, well, he has the most recent threats are this executive order to put ICE on Rikers Island. We have not seen an executive order as of yet. We have seen no language around it. So there's, we can surmise what that might be in the same way that we are preparing for a very extended travel ban to come down in place that has 45 countries on it and all the chaos that will ensue. We haven't seen language, so we don't know how we are going to be fighting this, but Rikers Island is a pretrial detention facility. So it's important for folks to know that folks on Rikers Island have not been sentenced, have not actually gone through a court system. They are accused of crimes. And so what ICE's function on Rikers Island would be is curious when, how would those two, there's no purpose to be there. If we believe in due process and we believe in protecting resources and data. So with that, I will stop and I would be happy to answer questions.
Just for context, I'd like to say, for one, thank you, Councilmember Aviles. I think part of why I thought this was such an important topic for CB2 is that immigrants are a critical component of CB2, our economy, commerce, faith services, educational services, public services, and they contribute to a richer culture in our community. In addition to that, we did reach out, early in January to MOIA, the Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs, to try to get them to present. And unfortunately, we faced a lot of obstacles in trying to get them. And eventually we just heard radio silence. And this was, as more and more was coming out in terms of what was happening with the Adams administration. there was a resolution, we don't have to go back to that. But thankfully, I was able to connect with Councilmember Aviles, and you did us a great service in favor of coming to educate us and teach us more about this very important topic. A follow-up question that I have, Council Member, is you're the chair of the New York City Council on Immigration. Can you maybe just briefly tell us a little bit of what is the purview of that committee? What types of legislation do you consider? How frequently do you meet?
Yes, so thank you for the question. So the Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs, also known as MOIA, is the acronym that we use. MOIA was created by ballot proposal in 2001. And it was, the attempt was, we have an expanding base of immigrants, super diverse. We have language needs. And it was a way to try to bring together and address certainly a language access, and also looking at how services are kind of meeting the needs of this very diverse community across New York City. So the committee's oversight is on MOIA. Now, the challenge with MOIA is that it's an advisory body, right? It's supposed to provide policy recommendations and advise city agencies around issues related to immigrants, whether it's, making policy recommendations or programmatic. And it also is responsible for receiving reports from city agencies around language access. And every city agency is supposed to provide an annual update and report around how they are going to meet the kind of language needs of their communities, right? Of the communities that we serve across New York City. Obviously, that is a very tall order. We speak upwards of 100 languages, probably a lot more than that. But the city does have 10 specified languages that it has identified as the main languages. And we all know, right? If you can't speak the language, all manner of things are going to be really, really difficult. And so the Committee on Immigration has oversight over MOIA, first and foremost, and then a new office was created called the Office of Immigrant Affairs, Office of Asylum Seeker Operations, OASO, was created in 2023 with the influx of new arrivals. That is a little different. It could be dismantled, but our oversight will be over MOIA and OASO. And often what we'll do is we have hearings generally once a month on various topics that come from communities around things we should be digging into. But they will also include other agencies. So like the Department of Social Services, right? Has lots of contracts. The Department of Youth and Community Development also has contracts for immigrant legal services and immigrant youth. So we'll look at kind of all these different facets and also bring in other agencies that manage kind of the programmatic and operational and funding elements. In terms of our jurisdiction for policymaking, here is a real challenge, right? Essentially, New York City has very little ability, actually has no ability to change federal immigration policy. That is the whole purview of the federal government. So what we do, so we have limited policy making around how our city entities can operate and should be operating with this lens of obviously making sure that our people are serviced and we are meeting kind of our mandates and our values. So there's not a ton of legislation that could actually be pushed through this committee, unlike some of the other more traditional committees. Its mandate is kind of broad, which makes it challenging, but really important in a time where so much of our community is uncertain and needing a certain level of service. And, we're wanting to hold the whole of New York City, make sure that folks are getting what they need.
Thank you.
Keen.
So I am not only on committee board too, but a member of Judson Memorial Church Immigration Task Force. And our goal, one of the things we really want to do is keep ICE out of Rikers. So my question is, what specifically are we supposed to do? What do you recommend to make sure that ICE stays out of Rikers?
Yeah, so we've been obviously noodling this question a while since we learned that that was the interest of the federal government and certainly the mayor's interest as well. I think it's gonna include everything from potential litigation to raising hell out in the community and raising awareness. This is why I brought up this issue of criminality. Right, I think much of the rhetoric has convinced a lot of people that this is about something that it's not, and that people shouldn't care about that because it's criminals and who cares about them. And so there's a lot of work to be done to kind of show what it really is and to get at the heart of like, this is actually not a host of policies that is going to actually keep us safe. In fact, what it will do is bring significant harm to people. So there's a ton of work to be done, I think, in community to both demystify, to address, to answer questions, and just, I think we gotta raise hell in all these issues. Honestly, we need community members to understand what the proposal is and its potential impacts. So all those things.
Okay, thank you.
Before going to Janet and Ivy, I have a question that I think is maybe related, which is, it sounds like the getting ICE into Rikers is a threat, a prospective thing. But I recall last month, I think it was last month, when the Trump administration rescinded the sensitive places guidance, and you can fill us in, but about not having immigration enforcement happen at places like churches and hospitals. And I guess since that was a place, that was an instance where it happened, I guess what have we seen since then? Have we seen ICE in those spaces? And kind of what is the reality on the ground under the new administration in terms of an increase in ICE enforcement in those sensitive locations, but just in general, do we have data about increased enforcement activity and increased deportations?
Yeah, so the removal of the sensitive locations was, of course, deeply disturbing, right? And really created, when that policy was announced, created some intense fear. I can just use my community as an example, Sunset Park. Immediately people were like, we're not sending the kids to school. We're going to retract from kind of, neighborhood life. It immediately created some panic. I think what you all saw was with, I think schools saw that immediately, and not only from the parents, but I think the educators also realized, what the hell is this? Like, this is terrible. So what you saw was an affirmation from schools that said, actually, without a judicial warrant, ICE will not be allowed in our locations. That follows New York City laws. And in many ways, it follows the values of so many educators across New York City who really see that schools are a protected place, right? So, I think churches, I think what we've seen is in these locations, the conversation, right? Schools are New York City facilities, so they would fall underneath our New York City, right, rule around not allowing anyone in without a judicial warrant. Churches have been debating, and I think my friend at the table from Judson Memorial, right? what is a public space and what is a private space? Now you,
We have a sign, you cannot come in at
right,
our door.
right. And so you as a church have made a decision that this is a private space.
Yes,
And as a private entity, you can do that. Some churches haven't quite figured that out, but people have to discern that and how they want to engage kind of with the public. I think what I often do is I'll go to the bodega owners who are like, what's happening? They're like freaked out too. And I say, if someone comes into your store, this is a private space, although it's a public store. The back room, if you slap on private onto that door, you can deny entry into anyone in that private room because this is a private space. You have to mark that it is private, and that needs to be clear. And you can require a judicial warrant for someone to come into that space. So there are ways that folks can try to protect themselves. And of course, the greatest protections are when you are in your home. That's when you hear much of the Know Your Rights say, don't open the door. They can't just bust in to your home. So as individuals, you do have the most rights. Obviously, if there is a judicial warrant and you do open the door, they can, but if you don't open the door, they can't come in. They're not going to bust in. So I guess the reality is on the street of New York City or in the subway, in these very open and public places, there is no guaranteed protection for anyone. And that's what you see all over the internet is you see people being arrested on the street. Or taking folks out of their houses because people have opened the doors. So there's no guarantees for protecting anyone on the street, which is why even something as simple as understanding that NYPD should never, must not ask for your immigration status. Saying something as simple as, am I free to go? Or I don't have to answer that question is really important, really scary. If anyone has ever been stopped by a police officer, you just feel nervous, even though you may not have done not a darn thing in the world. It's a scary engagement, let alone if you are very vulnerable and someone is coming after you. So the truth is, like, there's a lot of education to be had in communities around, and a lot of conversation in our community around what does it mean to have this safe passage? How can our families drop off their kids and feel like safe en route? We saw in Denver, ICE was posted up outside of school. They never went in, but they were sitting outside. And that created a huge amount of kerfuffle because what happens if people then don't feel like they're safe to do that? They don't come to school, and you see drops in attendance and that all other kind of impacts. So knowing your rights, educating folks around and working in community around what safe passage means. How do bodegas help a neighborhood person? If you need help, how do you make sure your neighbors know? How do you prepare yourself? And this is probably one of the saddest parts of my job these days. And we did this under the Trump administration. The first one was preparing families for what happens if they don't come home and what's going to happen with their children. And that is such an awful conversation to have with people, to really prepare and walk through those steps. But the truth is they have to, because like all emergency situations, you have to prepare for them. Being unprepared could be highly detrimental to your family and your children. So these are some of the things that we're doing. I think I moved that answer a little bit. Sorry.
No, it's all right. Ivy, go ahead.
Hi, Alexa. So obviously, I don't even know like which one I should ask, but the city clinics have a procedure of not letting ICE come in. What the community needs is funding for leadership to actually make giant posters outside and state those those laws. We cannot have conversations because we've been having them for decades in Trump first election. It's the same thing with schools. While we know some people know the laws, we just don't have, people are scared. So the other thing I wanted to also mention, just like the clinics for the schools, taking like a piece of practice for like workshopping leadership to fund like lawyers to volunteers and teach immigrants, or not teach, but actually do a process of the guardianship is really important, because we cannot constantly have these conversations and not have resources
I agree.
that are in the community. So those are things, while we know there's a law, it is not so easy when it happens to you, because even the police doesn't know the rules, but once they say it is, you can get into the argument. Next thing you're in a cell. So
Yep.
what I'm saying is, like, leadership has to allocate some money to put those giant posters in front of city clinics and state the laws. In the school, the same. And workshops, just like we did with the LGBT community, where trans community, where they changed their names in December,
Mhm.
like clinics like Aperture put some resources and had clinics where people could did the whole process of changing the name before the administration took office. So that is really important, that 7, 8 years ago, we had some clinics for children to assign guardianship. I would like to see if leadership can put money and start doing those workshops on the ground. Because
Yeah.
between community, we cannot just advocate the stuff. We really need money to do those paperwork.
Yeah, Ivy, I agree with you 100%. It has been part of the fight. And in fact, city council just, I want to say last month, I don't know, I kind of lose track of time. It's all one long day. Just added $2 million to distribute to organizations for additional work to know your rights, to do this kind of engagement. It's still not enough. It's not enough. We need more. We need the administration who, is hypocritical at best, who says, we're here for immigrants, and then like immigrants are destroying New York City
Are
at the
you
same breath.
are you referring to Adams when you say
Yes.
administration?
Referring to the mayoral administration, who controls the lion's share of the budget, to increase funding for organizations to do more of this work in community. Which includes, the legal services are at the front edge of this, right?
Right.
And very much underwater, and have been for years, but certainly now, even more than ever, we need more resources to go out the door, to be able to
So
do other
walk
things.
me through that right now, because that budget has not been allocated for this moment. You're saying that budget will have to go through a process of approval to give to different, I don't know, organizations, clinics.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
seems that it's like already like really late for us. Like,
no, we're in the middle of budget
right.
negotiations. And those will happen honestly until the moment of signing that budget, till the handshake deal, which is referred to, where the council agrees with the mayor. So like actually, Immigration Committee was one of the first to have its budget hearing early this month, I think on March 6th, but quite literally, we're gonna be wrapping up budget hearings this week. So what happens is the mayor puts out a preliminary budget in February. We in March have all these hearings. We're preparing responses. We're going to say, we need money for all these things, and all these things you didn't actually put in the budget. We want them back. We will be fighting over the next 2 months. And we will then come out with a kind of a final set of agreements. And so the advocacy from you all is really important over these next couple of weeks, right? To say, this is not a sufficient level of funding. We need X, Y, and Z, right? And you'll see kind of all the all the rallies and everything right now is focused on the budget and numbers around what is getting funded and what is not getting funded. So we're in the middle of that dance, so you have time to advocate for that. And I guess the last thing I'll say is on the signs, we actually have a bill that we submitted around this very issue to put signs up on whether it's healthcare centers or schools. I think it's a and question, right? Some people don't read signs. Some people do read signs. We need people to know their rights like intuitively. We need them to practice how to assert their rights, because you could know it, but you could also flee in human response when you're afraid. So we need all the things that we can do to make sure that, including having the services to help people address kind of this scary times that we're in.
Janet, and then Zach, Councilmember, just you can tell us if you have time that you have to go. We appreciate your time this evening, and there are more questions from the committee, but tell us if and when you have to.
I might have quick.
So I have like 10 more minutes, and
Okay,
then I'll
great.
have to jump. And I'm happy to also receive your questions and try to answer them.
Great. So Janet and then Zach.
Okay, this is a very, just some clarification. If ICE has a judicial warrant, do you have to let them into a private space? So is the private space moot if they have a, yes?
Yes, you should.
Okay. And you're saying, it's interesting, just, I live in a very big apartment building. I think this information, even telling like the doorman in an apartment building, if these men come, don't let them in. Like we can get like all of us, most of us live with many other people, and we can do that just on a personal level.
Yeah.
And then the other question, you say we should be advocating for more money for legal services. Do you have a number in mind that you think would be adequate?
Oh my goodness, I should have a number in mind for you, especially since we talk about it so much. I'm happy to get back to you with that. We have numbers, but I have too many numbers in my head to tell you the right one. In any circumstance, it has to increase. It can't stay the same. The demands are too high. And what happens is during these, like when the first Trump administration, the cases become so much more complex. And what we're seeing is the cases are getting more complex because the executive orders are complicating the cases even more. So the legal community that we have who's already working on these things are doing 10 times more work on a one case than they would ordinarily had the laws not changed. And now we're expediting removal of people. So almost immediately they're showing up, like this young woman from Tufts University who was arrested for her pro-Palestinian protest, was immediately sent to Louisiana. Her lawyer couldn't find her for a good number of, I think, over 12 hours. And when they did locate her, she was taken from Massachusetts to Louisiana, where she has no access. There's no family around who's gonna, but lawyers are really hard to get to. So really, all these steps are really straining the New York lawyers who are out here trying to do this work in a way. So we need, at minimum, to absolutely increase the money.
Again, thanks for this very comprehensive testimony on the topic. I think one of the things that I'm hearing from the other members here is that there seems to be a real need for larger scale education around know your rights and being able to empower, especially nonprofits in our community across the city, to be able to provide some of this information and services, because frankly, I haven't really seen that yet, and it doesn't seem scalable for you to have one-on-one conversations with all your constituents.
That's very important.
But educating building staff and bodega owners and restaurant owners, like that is a large campaign that it does not seem that is it might be percolating slightly, but I think it likely needs to accelerate. The question I have though is actually on other structural reform related to kind of where immigrants tend to be most vulnerable, and that's related to labor rights. I think, things like food vendor permits, taxi medallions, like these are things that are documented cases where immigrants, especially undocumented immigrants, are put in especially vulnerable, usually financially predatory relationships because of these quite arbitrary caps that New York City has on some of these licenses. That also puts them in the crosshair of the NYPD, increasing the likelihood of criminal burden and thus making it easier to deport them. So my question is, as the lead of this immigrant committee within the council, are you looking at changing those laws? And like, what is sort of what are the friction points or the barriers to get those changed? Because it's, I think these are ongoing issues that have been existing for many years at this point.
Yeah, it's a great question. And yes, while you change minds one by one, I'm going to change it community board by community board. Look, it's a multiplier effect, but absolutely, like, there's I think a lot of work to be done, but there is also a lot of community members that are doing grassroots responses. And my hope here is by dropping a couple of nuggets, you guys will think about, yes, it is important to have a protocol for the doorman. It is important for you to think about your bodega owner who is potentially in a mixed status family, or maybe even undocumented themselves, like how they're going to protect themselves, or your institution of faith. How are you going to create these mechanisms of safety for each other? So more know your rights stuff on an individual basis. And the New York City Council does have several videos, and on the website actually does have a bunch of resources that we have put out. So you should definitely, if you can't find the link, I think it's like Council Know Your Rights. You should circulate it. In terms of these other industries where they're 100% agree with you, there are a ton of structural reforms. And in particular, I think the big thing that is street vendors, right? Incredibly vulnerable, right? They're not sitting in a bodega, they're on the street, the most vulnerable place to be. There's no place to run. We have actually been debating for a long time a package of street vendor bills that would try to reform a pretty broken, fragmented system that is just not working for anyone, whether you like the vendors or not. It doesn't seem to be working. It's just kind of like catch as catch can.
Yep.
So in particular, I think I have been advocating, this is even before the Trump administration, right? These are controversial things in communities because people feel many different ways about them, and there are bad actors and there are great vendors. Like, it's a mixed bag. The notion that a vendor is getting a ticket that is a criminal citation or can turn into a criminal citation, knowing the precarity of the intersection of immigration status and criminal citation puts someone immediately in danger for deportation, even before the Trump administration. So we knew that this was not good. Like, your churros should not be the reason why you're getting deported, or selling your churros, right? So we had been debating that part of the law should change because it is just unfair, it's just unjust, right? We're still debating that. Now, of course, the political context has changed, right? Now, under the Trump administration, they passed the Laken Riley Act, which says if you are accused of stealing, you can be indefinitely detained. like accused of stealing a pack of now and laters that shows my age, right? Do they sell now and laters anymore? Anyway, this candy, we're accused of selling candy. You can be indefinitely detained in a detention facility that is often a private profit tiering detention facility for as long as they want. So now what do we do with the nexus of a federal law that is saying if you are accused, you can be indefinitely detained, and then you have someone selling on the street who is getting a criminal summons? So we have a problem that we have been fighting to fix. I wish I could tell you we have fixed it. I think people are changing a little bit their perspective. Now they're maybe starting to see the urgency that this was not a theoretical fear, that this was a real one. Many people don't come with that experience. And so they're like, nobody's getting criminal summons for vending. I'm like, oh, yes, they are. And you know what happens in the immigration code? You can get deported for these things, or you can just be in a lot of trouble, and it catches up because it takes the process so many years to kind of complete. So a lot of work to be done is the answer to that, and I hope in some ways we will meet the urgency of the moment by doing something that is fair, and I hope that people can come to a compromise to understand the system of street vending needs to change. We're going to have to take some risks around what that looks like, because perpetuating something that doesn't work is insanity. But we're stuck there, and we have been doing it for a long time. So I think it's very much a hot debate.
Thank you. I'm sure we could ask you many more questions, but being mindful of your time, I think we should end it here. Arturo, do you want to say anything to wrap up?
No, I just thank you again, Councilmember Aviles. I really appreciate that we got to connect. I appreciate you taking the time to meet with us. I know you have a very busy schedule and are working on a number of issues. The education and the message that you're sending is invaluable, and so I'm definitely, and I think the committee feels great gratitude and in our community.
Absolutely, amen.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all, and feel free to send questions. We will happy to answer. This is part of the work, so I appreciate the invitation and appreciate all that you're doing as community board members. I know it could be a thankless job, but they're very important jobs. So thank you.
Likewise, being on the city council.
Yeah. Who you telling? I'm a former community board member. No, thank you. And let's keep New York City compassionate, inclusive. Let's be the best version of ourselves, not this bullshit that Trump wants. That's not who we are. So
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember.
take care, y'all. Bye.
Thank you, thank you. Arturo, you'll send this to the committee?
Yes, I just did. Yes.
Okay, but I'm not online. Oh, you just sent it in an email to all of us?
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Arturo, for making that happen. So now we're going to move on to our next agenda item, which is about the Red Door Place. Okay, come on, let's join the table.
Oh yeah, we can make space.
Take turns in the hot seat.
I
know it.
I don't think your hot seat. I don't think your hot seat will be quite as hot.
She was so articulate. She is such a good communicator.
So
Thank you, Arthur.
thank you so much for coming.
Well, thank you for having us.
Before I pass it to you to fill us in on what's happening.
Yes.
I will just note, as Susanna did to our committee before, that we heard from Teresa Concepcion about the program about 10 months ago at our May meeting. So, and we heard about just the increase in usage of the Red Door Places offerings and about the rollout of Bridging the Gap and some requests. Of course, since then, Teresa passed away tragically and suddenly. And so I think we're here to get an update on how the organization is responding to that. But also, I think generally like what is happening in the last year and how we can be of service.
Okay, thank you. Basically.
And why don't you introduce yourself first?
Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
My name's Sean McGoldrick. I'm the acting executive director for the Red Door Places. I was the one that knew where most of the things were. And unfortunately, her passing was very sudden and with, very little warning. So it was quite disturbing. But we as a group of volunteers, dedicated board members, affiliated school, we all felt that it was necessary to continue this. It was not even a question about rolling it up or anything along those lines. So we have been doing a regular food pantry. We have been doing, as you mentioned in the previous time, Bridging the Gap. The social services is picking up steam. We handle people with questions in several different languages on benefits, legal matters, and basically any other questions along that, registration for getting Social Security and everything along those lines. We do it in conjunction with our food pantry. So there's a certain level of trust that Teresa has fostered over the years amongst the community, that people aren't afraid to come in and ask questions. They can actually, come up and whisper in your ear, hey, can I go inside? Please go inside. We actually have also designated the place as a private space. And we've instructed anybody who interacts with anybody in the public to basically inform people of their rights, as the council person was talking about earlier. So we're well aware of that. We've not had any issues yet, and our pantry public is a combination of primarily Hispanic and Asian populations here in the city. So, but none of them seem to be showing concern. And Dawn and I, having been the people that check people in, have seen a wide variety of passports used as picture IDs. So we know that the people are coming from a wide variety of locations. I guess the big ask here, and I can give you statistics, I can give you funding, I can give you all that stuff. But the big ask is the space that we're currently housed in, the Church of the Village, has been for years in very dire financial straits. The pandemic really put some, really kind of diminished the congregation, and a combination of factors, building maintenance of a historical building, and, other such activities has really made them incredibly desperate for money in any which way they can. They are actually looking, this is public knowledge, by the way, they are looking to sell the building. So in their last ditch efforts to make money, they tend to rent it out to anybody. They'll rent it out for events, they'll rent it out for TV shoots, they'll rent it out for anybody along that. And that has sort of created has forced us as the food pantry, not so much the soup kitchen, but the food pantry, to really have to shift around things to be able to be open on a Tuesday. We use Plentiful app, and every single slot is taken up by Saturday morning. We have a very, very good reputation as having a wide variety of things. Our funding sources are actually quite generous. So we're able to provide fresh meats, fresh produce, and we always get in a bunch of, nice things from City Harvest collections and everything else like that. One of the sad things that I've had to do as the director that I never learned from Teresa is that we could be getting food donations 7 days a week and be acting as a true clearinghouse. We could expand our services to probably twice the amount of people that we're servicing now. Very easily, very scalably. And the issue is the usage of the space. You know, we did a study several years ago. We had a volunteer who was actually a interior structural engineer. So he was actually able to give us a real markdown. It's like, what would we need as a footprint for it? So we actually do have a pretty expert opinion on exactly what we would need to be able to continue these sorts of things. And our ask is just for space, a space that we can kind of call our own, you know?
Explain exactly what space the Church of the Village gives you now. I mean, what happens?
See, so what we do is we have a very small little room off the main sanctuary where we have a bank of freezers and refrigerators, which we can take in goods from Friday through the Tuesday pantry, and we keep them, you know, properly refrigerated and kept. All our deliveries now have to be scheduled on Monday for bulk. And because otherwise there'd be no place to put it for Saturday services, albeit very sparsely attended, and anything else. So they've really sort of kind of constricted us into this one little area, of which they then say you have to leave a clear pathway through it. Not for any fire or other reasons, but just to be difficult. So that has really hindered my ability to order stuff, to be able to stockpile things, because I just don't have that spare space anymore. You know, we're really running a very just-in-time inventory system where we get the food in on Friday for Saturday's meal, we get the food in on Monday for Tuesdays. And that costs money. That doesn't have I don't have the luxury of taking on excess stuff because of the restriction.
So just remind us, like, my recollection is that there's the food pantry and the soup kitchen, and the food pantry serves 1,500 people per week, or no, 7,000 people per week, 1,500 for the soup kitchen. That's what we heard last year. And so is Saturday is the soup kitchen and Tuesday is the food pantry.
Yeah, we cook the meal on Saturday mornings, and we distribute it at noon to 2 o'clock on those days.
So the church obviously has a kitchen that you use.
Yes.
So have you, because you looked at it closely, do you know how many square feet you need?
For the pantry itself, I recall it was about 3,000 square feet plus requisite electrical wiring that can handle freezers and the refrigerators. The kitchen itself is hard to replace, but then again, that's never really been a concern because it's very clearly never used on a Saturday. So that has always been, that has never really been like an issue with the church as much. The bridging the gap social services, it doesn't take up a very big footprint. It's just, you know, a couple of small tables and computers in private areas.
So you'd ideally like your own space for.
If I was to say yes, if that was my dream, my own space on a street level, so we can take in pallets of goods without having to do that. It's always hard to find people that can handle that much physical labor because it's a huge amount of stuff. You know, I mean, my deliveries are usually 8,000 pounds at least, and that's just from one single source like Food Bank.
When you say that you think there's demand for that you could have serve twice as many people,
yeah,
I guess, is that based on the number of people who are using Plentiful? Like, is there a wait list? I guess, how do you know how many people are in the service population, given how quickly the slots fill up?
Given how quickly the slots fill up is one of the issues. One of the other ones too is that whenever anybody leaves it, if sometimes people, I've made a rule that if you can't attend, please free up the space as soon as possible so someone else can grab it. I can see the turnover there. It's 50 people leave, 50 people come in, and that's usually within an hour or two. People.
Do you know how many like account holders there are? Like how many? Because I imagine you have to do something to be able to make an appointment.
Yeah, I think the current amount of people now registered, active people is about 1,800. I don't know how many people are registered overall because the system is good for the scheduling, but it's not so good for me to get behind the scenes to see exactly the actual raw data behind it. Yeah, but it's also too, I base that also on City Harvest telling me on a Tuesday or no, on a Wednesday, hey, can you take 3 pallets of something today? And I'm like, I'd love to take 3 pallets, but I can't,
So, sorry, just to make sure I totally understand, you said there's 1,800 people who are active users of that.
That's to my recollection.
But I recall that Teresa told us 7,000 people per week came through the food pantry. Is that
One person can pick up for up to 12 people. Counted as a household. So it's one person is a household. That household can have up to 12 people within that house legitimately, and that qualifies them for like 3 bags.
I see.
So yeah, that's the multiplier there.
That makes sense. That's helpful.
Do you know, or do people come just from all over the city?
We place no geographical restrictions, but given the density maps that they provide by zip code, it's from 2 bridges, which I'm using that word, and Chelsea, probably from the Clinton project.
Other question?
I am just curious if you've been having conversations with either city agencies or with other locations like the gigantic Salvation Army buildings to see if other people might be willing to host you.
Yeah, I've actually put out word, and it'll be going out in food banks, email blast. I've asked United Way, but they're kind of large organization, City Harvest. So I've reached out to other people that do interact with other pantries and such. So
The city council people, you've spoken to Eric Botcher.
no, I have not.
Okay, because they would be good people.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I mean, there aren't so many city buildings, obviously, because we hear about them when they're trying to build new housing, but it would certainly be worth, I think, having a conversation with, not even sure who in the city, but it's probably starting with the city council member's office to see if there are any opportunities for it to be hosted within because most of your funding comes from the city, right?
Well, it actually comes from also private foundations like Rockefeller.
Oh, okay.
Affinity. We have gotten things from Robin Hood in the past. We have quite a few wealthy individuals that are also quite generous with their money to us. So it is all over the place. Yeah.
So
But you need a kitchen, right? You need a working kitchen.
We would need a kitchen, yeah.
So it's nice.
Which is always the thing. I mean, part of it was even splitting the program, that even just only the pantry would be held in another location, and the kitchen would be continuing to be used as that. Because as far as the ministry goes for the church, it's a nice look. Number one. Number two, I do notice that when we don't have that meal that Saturday, the following Saturday, people remark about it. We try to get the news out to people, like, especially if it's bad weather. It's like, please don't come. We're not open today. But it does provide that necessary service.
And the neighborhood, I wasn't here 10 months ago, but I guess it works fine with the neighborhood. The neighbors don't have an issue with it.
It's funny. They used to grumble a little bit about it, but for the most part, I think it was because they didn't really get to know the people. They saw a mass of people, but like if you go and talk to them, they're like totally cool,
and
fun people,
it's
and like
extremely orderly.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
at least on the outside.
No. That came with a little bit of training, and but I mean, our instances having to involve the police in any sort of ruckus out there has really gone down over time.
So I have 2 questions. One is just about the location. It sounds like the church is workable for, like, I guess, do you see a time imminently when you will have to find an alternative location, or is it is an alternative location a nice to have or a must have, and over what time horizon?
I would probably say it's in between. I kind of try to anticipate problems because I mean, for example, I know a little bit about real estate and the use of that church is incredibly limited.
Mhm.
You know, you would buy that place for whatever. There's no air rights. You know, I don't know if the world needs another Limelight style club, you know, open up or whatever. But, you know, the use of that space is incredibly unusual, you know, and plus the ongoing maintenance that would be maintaining the facade to the standards that, you know, HPD or whoever the governing body is just like, well, yeah, people who know how to make leaded glass and put them in frames anymore. I don't even know where you find them, you know.
There is a residential conversion of a church on 13th Street.
Is it really?
Yeah,
Yeah,
somewhere on
further down.
13th. Yeah, further west.
Is it in the realm of possibilities for you and a consortium of other nonprofits to purchase the building? We only because we've heard from several organizations about space issues and thinking of creative solutions here.
No.
I like creative solutions.
My dream is always that Google would reach back in their couch, find enough spare change and buy the church, and I would slap any corporate logo. Google presents the red door place featuring, you know, whatever, I don't care. You know, it's just over the years, we just thought that there would be someone to do that, but selling this church is very difficult.
Yeah.
It's very difficult. The asking price is a little, I mean, I almost personally said, and I would figure out where to get it later. I'd say, I'll give you, you know, $1.5 million. That's now. And I would just have to figure out how to get one, which I don't know how to do. But just because I'm a little bit of a poker player, I just wanted to see, would you take that?
Yeah.
You know?
I'll buy it for one place.
Yeah.
Hey, there you go.
Jan and I are going to be a consortium, but not a nonprofit.
I don't care if it's one person.
So it sounds like the relocation it's not an imminent need in that the church isn't kicking you out and they don't have a
No,
contract,
but
it's something that you think.
I've survived a lot of my life on gut instincts and knowing when.
You have a gut feeling that this is.
The main pastor is retiring.
I see.
So he's around. I don't even know if he's the only reason that they're still up and operational. I don't know. There's a lot of inner workings that we don't know, but I just know that the hoops we have to jump through week to week seem to be getting greater.
Okay. And so my other question was really about continuity within the organization. So at the time that we heard from Teresa, she said there were 4 part-time staff and 4 volunteer coordinators who were bridging the gap. And the annual budget was about $340,000 from the grants. I guess like your interim executive director, is there a search underway for someone permanent? Is the staff still at 4 people? Like, and is there a board? Like, who hires the executive director? Like, what is the structure and how, you know, what's the current staffing and the plan for going forward with on the team side and also on, you know, securing forthcoming grants of support? Because I imagine Teresa helped a lot of those relationships. So
yeah, well, actually, we do have 2 grant writers, one senior one junior one, who have been the ones that have been reeling in the ones like Rockefeller and other ones. So they're actually pretty well set. They aren't salaried. They're just helping out.
okay.
I'm not drawing salary. Right now, the staff we do have are basically for taking in deliveries and as a chef for preparing the meals on Saturday. Other than that, you know, obviously we've that budget would hold true if the new person coming in were to have the same salary as Teresa did. But again, as I've learned from, you know, any of the grants that we've, non-monetary grants, I call them, the credits with food providers, that it's incredibly generous. You know, so right now, I'd say our sustainability is very good. Yeah, I don't think we would have a cash shortfall. I'm also the treasurer.
Mhm.
So that's one of the things that I at least find some solace in, which we do have a fairly hefty bank account because there's really no one drawing a serious salary. We do have a board. Jacques Black behind there is one of the members. Yeah.
Wonderful.
And you asked about, a search process.
Yeah.
We are right now in the middle of a search for a full-time director. And we've been interviewing people like crazy. We put a job notice on Aviles. And the response has been overwhelming, actually. Not only overwhelming, but incredibly qualified people. So we hope in the very near future, like in the next couple of weeks, to select somebody and get them on board, so that we can lighten Sean's load, because he's wearing too many hats.
So that person,
Just repeat your name one more time. Your name?
Jacques Black.
Okay. Thank you.
so that person then would assume the responsibility of perhaps finding you a new home.
Yeah, well, we haven't talked to people about that because, I mean, that's, why would you hire somebody if you're going to be thrown out tomorrow?
Well, no. I would phrase it as we're looking to be
But we
open
have
4 days a
talked to
week.
people about the issues, the current space issues and the current sort of administrative issues we have with the existing people in the church. So I think when we get somebody who we make an offer to, we will make it clear to them that that's going to be part of what their job is, as well as all of the tasks that Teresa historically did. So we're very hopeful. I'm very hopeful anyway, that we will find somebody very soon.
Great work.
I know a lot of federal workers who were recently unemployed and looking to tap into that.
Kathy Hochul,
Yeah, the governor accepted them. It's true. It's true. I mean, do you have a sense of if you were to have to pay for a rental space, what sort of cost that would look like? And would you stay in the village? Do you think you would relocate to another part of New York? Just kind of curious from a trajectory.
I would kind of want to continue to serve. I mean, as selfish as it might sound, kind of continue to serve within the same community that we've established. I mean, we've gotten to know them. We've gotten to know what's needed for these communities. Some of whom, are supporting huge families. Obviously I could go somewhere else in New York and experience the same thing, but I think part of our goodwill and trust and bridging the gap success is based on the trust that we've developed with these people over the years and our relationships with them. So,
I mean, do you have a sense of like how much it would cost to
I do not
rent a space?
No.
All right. I think something that we could keep an eye on is lots of new development there. They have a requirement to set aside community space. I mean, I know there's a community space now. It looks tiny on University Place, but we might mention to the zoning committee if any of these new projects have a requirement.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I mean,
Finally build that building in Soho.
Yeah.
I mean, we did try to get into the community space in the on 9th Avenue, 18th Street in the Clinton series of buildings, and we were just too late. Like if we jumped in there a little bit earlier, they would have been, oh man, we would have loved to have you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Okay, and we can also circle back to you all on, I don't know if it maybe Susanna would know of like what agency might be good for you to talk to about where there is, who is looking at this type of city space and for use of nonprofits. And so we can come back to you on who might be the right connections.
I also think some of the bids could be, they know their infrastructure and their buildings. You should talk to the business.
Ivy?
So there must be a list of all the churches or religious places that have, the tax deferment that they have to have their space available. But do have a budget of what rentals will look like. I don't think the what is it called? The tenant exchange for building out and having free space is big enough, or have kitchen facilities. So I would just continuously use what religious spaces have allocated space for community use based on the tax deferment. There is a list there, and you should hold them accountable for that. As of churches changing hands, they all want to sell. So I'm going to tell you, it's not going to be $1 million. Developers and private equity, are going to take over this stuff. So just hold on to what we have right now. Buying this stuff is just not going to be accessible for unless we're in private equity. We're in Black Mirror period right now.
Tell us more about Bridging the Gap, because it was brand new. Last we heard, it had served 30 people, and the coordinators were volunteers. Teresa talked about wanting to get grant funding, wanting to be able to give stipends to the people doing the coordination. But do you know how many people have been served by Bridging the Gap and the kind of rate of connection with relevant services?
I think the last figure I saw, like from a couple of weeks ago, was we've seen 120 people.
Okay.
Many of them saying over and over,
Yeah.
repeat, they have an appointment to come back and continue the process. We have signed them up for benefits. We have signed them up for people eligible for half rate Metro cards. We've done, everything. They come in. We don't really restrict what they can come in for. Sometimes they just come in to ask questions. And these are people that, are sitting right in front of a computer and can do any of these sorts of lookups for them and help them out. So while we try to, we advertise it as doing, specific tasks, we have actually branched into also being kind of like, I don't know how to use a computer, to help me kind of situation, which we find is very useful. We also have several people that are fluent in Spanish, fluent in Russian, somewhat fluent in French. That's most of the folks that speak French also speak English. So we have an outreach, that sort of thing is taken care of. There's one place, I think, in Chinatown, which is like the ultimate in community center service providing, which I had to go visit sometime.
What's it called?
I can't even remember, but it's in the Bowery. I have asked the Chinese that I know directly, how come you don't ever want to use our services? It was like, no, we have it taken care of down in Chinatown. Like totally taken care of.
Yeah,
Obviously, probably.
The Chinese community organizing, they have a huge building.
Yeah.
Is it for volunteer? Like who?
Yeah, it's all volunteer based.
And is it the same people who were there a year ago?
Yep.
I know at the time there was a kind of aspiration to get dedicated grant funding for Bridging the Gap. Has that happened?
We did receive, I believe, $30,000 to expand that. I've also tasked the main person, who's unfortunately not here today, to really be a little bit more active in spreading the word, like street marketing style. Whether it's even putting it up on the kiosks that you see around, literally walking to every single church or community center within a 10-block radius and just handing out a flyer saying this is what's available. It's going to be going out in a food bank blast, email blast too. So we have been trying to, beef up that awareness of that.
And is the limiting fact, is there more demand for Bridging the Gap than there is capacity to?
No, not at this point.
Okay.
Yeah, not at this point. But that is incredibly scalable. I mean, we do have that people take the Board of Health, mental health training, which we all took. And but other than that, it's really just people who are problem solvers.
Right.
And it's good interpersonal skills, being able to communicate with people and just help
Are they
with one
there?
of these,
Yeah. Are they there on the Saturdays and the Tuesdays?
just the Tuesday.
Just the two.
Yeah, yeah. They're open before the pantry opens up and they stay open after the pantry.
Do people also make appointments for that with
Yeah,
planning?
yeah, they swing, yeah, they help them make appointments for the thing. And oftentimes, if someone drops out, they can actually end up getting a bag that day, so.
Mhm.
Oh, so you have to make an appointment to meet to the bridging the gap as well?
Oh, no, that can, sometimes they have a standing appointment if they've already come in, it's a follow-up. But other than that, it's just walk in.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because we combine it with our meal service, giving away bags.
Sorry to interrupt, but I wanted to call your attention to the chat, and I've got actually now I've got to scroll it. Malik Mendez.
Yeah. We already.
You already got it? Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Mark might have an answer to this question, which is, Mark, if they wanted to get bridging the gap on Link boards.
Link NYC boards?
Yeah, Link NYC boards.
Same people who are bringing us the 5G towers?
Sure. 5G towers regardless.
Tone a little bit for that.
Yes.
So there is a way to do that, and I know it, and it's a little more involved than what I can describe right now, but it's doable. It's absolutely doable.
And is that a free process for getting announcements on
It's
there?
free for the community board.
Okay.
I don't know whether that extends to other not-for-profits. I assume you're a 501c3, so there's a good chance, and if not, I think there's probably at least a friendly rate, if not a zero rate. So
I think they're required
I'll
to
get you my
give
card and
a
we can
certain
talk about that
percentage
offline.
of their
Perfect, thank
time to nonprofit community.
Yeah.
Oh, there.
Executive key
Yeah.
is, and because I got in touch with them because they didn't have us with the correct name. I didn't say Red Door Place, it's
Yeah.
a church in the village,
Mm-mm.
which they must have carried over that from some old. They did manage to get it changed, and I just said I was a board director, member on it, and they took care of that, so they already know who we are.
Yeah. I mean, this will will refresh it with something else. One other thing I do want to mention is the reason that Dawn Bauer here is here because you tell her what you do.
Yeah, so I'm Dawn Bauer and I'm a 7th grade humanities teacher at the City and Country School, which is a pre-K through 8th grade private school on 13th Street, 6th and 7th Avenue. Before I arrived at the school, the Red Door and the school had a long existing relationship where the school had been doing a lot of support of the Red Door in the form of your basic canned food drives, winter coat drives, baby supplies, toiletry drives, packing lunches for the Saturday hot meal that would accompany a hot meal when that goes out the door. When I got there, I realized that there was a real opportunity to sort of just deepen, enhance the learning that the kids were already doing in the existing projects that were happening by building out a real service learning curriculum, and service learning being learning that goes on in the classroom that then is, complemented with actual hands-on experiences that happen repeatedly outside of the classroom where kids get to see the manifestation of what they've been learning about inside the classroom. So in the fall of 2019, I had approached Teresa and asked her what she thought of the idea, and with her guidance and support, and of course my principal's support, wrote out a curriculum that has now been living in our school in our 7th grade for the past 7 years. So the kids that I teach go every Tuesday and work, there's a morning shift and an afternoon shift. In the morning, they're getting ready for the people who are coming in the afternoon, and in the afternoon time, they're actually serving the guests that come to the pantry. It's cross curriculum. I teach it with the math teacher, so I'm able to do work, at the beginning of the year, it's just, what is food insecurity? Who does it affect? What does it look like in rural, suburban, urban neighborhoods? What are the services, or what kinds of things might be available to a family or an individual who's affected with food insecurity? Mental and physical effects of being food insecure over time. with the math teacher, I'm able to take that specific problem and bring in what is the difference between a minimum wage and a living wage? What are SNAP benefits? How do you access them? Can you really feed a family on SNAP benefits? So all of the learning that we've been doing is really anchored in these experiences that I'm able to give the kids every Tuesday. And so when I think about like, just, and Sean has brought up, our sort of, I think of it as space insecurity. I know that I get sort of like butterflies in my stomach and sort of want to like heave because I know how much and how important this is to the kids that I teach. Through experiences of reading their written responses and reflections about working at the food pantry, through conversations, through group discussions, it is beyond meaningful and beyond something that they look forward to, and not just because they're missing class, because they have to make up the work that they missed anyway. That's not a negotiable. It's the thing that I know that they take away from the curriculum is their actual experience with guests and with their experiences with the volunteers that they meet and work with over the year's time. It starts in September, it ends in June. And I'm teaching 26 years now, and I know that there is nothing that I could come up with and, no, regardless of how well it were designed, the experience that they have working at the food pantry, I couldn't give it to them otherwise. And so it's just an incredibly valuable piece of my curriculum and the experience that I'm able to deliver to kids. So I just wanted to give that a real shout out because they really mean a lot to a secondary group that we are a collateral benefit beyond just the people who do services. And I just wanted to let you know how powerful it is and how much it means to me and to the students and their families, quite honestly.
Thank you. Yeah.
That's very inspiring. I'm so glad you're doing that.
Is it every Tuesday for the year?
September until June.
Wow.
And,
Yep.
children have a rotating shift that I have set up at the beginning of the year. And we start the year with just, learning. I mean, most of the children that I teach are coming from very well-resourced families.
Yeah.
And this is something that they would never have any idea exists and exists just not that far from the front door of their school. And are shocked to learn that most of the people that come to the pantry work full-time jobs.
Yeah.
And so it's, and of course, none of that, they come by it honestly, and that's not their fault. That's their walk of life.
Yeah.
But giving a face to it and a name to it. I mean, kids over time will say, "Oh, did you see that guy? I haven't seen him for weeks." And I'll say, "Yes, he came." And so there's just sort of this sense of the people, they look like us and they're really no different than us. And they just, have circumstances that are very different from us. So it gives them something that nothing else could.
And
Great.
that it's seventh grade?
Seventh grade.
And
So they're all 12 year olds.
how many seventh graders are there?
Right now, the class is 32.
Thank you so much for sharing. Are the grant writers aware of that? That's
Oh, yeah.
very compelling piece of the foundation funding.
And I think you'd say, Sean, they're really good workers.
Yeah, for the most part, yeah, I would not expect them to dig in the way they do, which is good. Yeah.
Can you use all 32 every Tuesday?
No, we only see 8.
8.
Oh, no, 4, sorry, 4. 2 in the morning, 2 in the afternoon.
Oh, okay, so.
I think the afternoon ones have more fun because that's the people part.
I think so.
Yeah, I would always say that that's really, anybody can stuff bags, you can do that at school, but like when it comes to meeting people, it's a big thing.
And I think they start intimidated and before they work their first afternoon shift, there's always a little bit of, I sense some, anticipation and anxiety perhaps, which is very rapidly dispelled.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Are there other questions for our Red Door Place guests? No? Great. Very helpful to hear what's
much for having us.
obviously you've come through a very challenging chapter, but it sounds like the program is in good hands and we will do what we can to support your.
Thank you, and I'll take a look at everything that you folks have, like, wonderful things, business improvement, everything else.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of introductions we can make about space. It sounds like you don't need help with the hiring or the funding or the staffing.
Yeah.
More broadly. And it sounds, just to say back what I think we heard, which is that you all could expand how much you're providing and how often you're providing it, and that space is the constraint.
That would be, I know that was Teresa's dream, that was my dream too. It's just like, we could really make quite an empire out of it.
Right.
So to speak.
Thank you so much. Thanks for coming.
Thank you all.
Nice to meet you. Thank you.
Any more information?
How about Chelsea Market? They've got kitchens.
We actually we were gonna do something hydroponic with the people in Chelsea Market. They were gonna open up a hydroponic lab for I forget which demographic they were gonna do, but it was supposed to be a sort of a very cathartic thing growing. I mean, because growing things is kind of peaceful.
Yeah.
And useful. So,
Business session.
All right. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
We're going to go into business session now. Folks are welcome to stay and listen. I think the question we have before us is whether we want to do a resolution about anything, how we want to communicate what we have heard tonight for the full board. So what do folks think?
I don't see a resolution here.
I'd like to write a resolution for the kind of like welcoming city principles that Councilmember Aviles wrote about. Essentially, kind of stating a more factual and clear narrative on our immigrant neighbors, their contributions, kind of like countering the criminality narrative, and saying that we support the laws that are in place.
Well, I think we ought to do something about ICE out of Rikers. I mean, I think that
And even saying, yeah.
I think we should make a
taking a stance,
statement
yeah.
at community board too,
Opposes that.
is because of all of our values, we are certainly concerned that, what do they call them, retainers? No,
Detention.
Retainers,
Yeah.
that we, that is a very specific issue. Mayor Adams has talked about it, but he has not yet said it. And I think the reason he hasn't said it is he's worried about pushback.
I agree with you from a philosophical perspective, but that feels to me like a bit of a reach for our community board to be opining on especially Rikers right now, given the fact that there are lawsuits against the city, there's a question of federal receivership. It seems like an odd thing to inject on. I would say if we do have a resolution, I would be much more comfortable if it was more around the rights education. And because that feels a little more embedded in the community, and that the city council can be more proactive in informing community members of their rights in cases of immigration enforcement. Just again, it feels a little more community board centric to me.
To me, it's time for us to actually be at some kind of pivot on that. That people who are, arrested but have not been, due process is important for all of us, and that's what I thought of Rikers.
Yeah, I agree with that.
My concern is that I feel like that almost should be a separate agenda item. Because we didn't, the agenda item doesn't reference anything as specific as the Rikers situation. And that.
So you're telling me that legally we shouldn't do a resolution on it? Because
I don't know. I'm not.
Okay,
I don't know if it fits. I'm open-minded.
Valerie?
Valerie,
Valerie, you could tell us, maybe.
No, oh no, I was just gonna throw out things for the committee to consider that, I don't know if anyone here has read the resolution from schools. Wasn't there a resolution from schools on ICE in schools? Because I think, I know it was a really broad citywide conversation and we didn't really have, I don't know if we asked for public testimony or not. Or questions to the, because I was in and out, but to the council member, but remember too, that this could always be a start of an exploration of this topic. Since the council member didn't really have, specific action items that were addressing this community directly, to the point about, having another discussion or bringing in someone else, that you do have the option of not, you can always write a report and continue the exploration of where that goes. What are the numbers for CB2 of like, where's the data of, and that may be a non-question because it's not.
Yeah.
Somewhere, but in terms of to really have something meaningful, that we're not just, that's something that our council members who I assume that this resolution would get sent to, like, what can they take action on? If it's just a yes, we, so I offer that there, and then also offer, if anyone, I know there might be some overlap here for schools, just of a connection there, because I think that's where we have the most impact of the ICE going into schools, or that kind of being an issue.
One action that was discussed was, the educational component and being more comprehensive. So that was covered.
Yeah.
So we could say resolution or support, and we resolved that there should be more comprehensive education. And then as an action item for our city council people, and it's also that we want more money in the budget to both the education part and the legal.
And the legal part.
Yeah.
And really quickly, my last thing too is, remember, what you're finding out now is what you looking for the FY 27 budget. We're going to start working on that district needs statement. So this is a good chance to start writing pieces of what would go in that district needs as it relates to this, to start advocating for the FY 27 budget, which we start in a few months.
Yeah, Valerie, that's helpful. And Jen, I think thanks for saying that. I actually feel like New York City has been very deficient and slow, especially like the reporting I've read from other cities working on Know Your Rights training. And I was, if I can be frank here, I was a little unimpressed by how it like seems to be very ad hoc and very disorganized and like quite distributed for something that is a citywide issue, and there's a lot of banging around about it. So I agree. I think having something that was like, we want to streamline, we want to create a pathway.
Just to give you some information, when we reached out to Moya in January, one of the first responses that we got as we were making inroads was that they were stopping all Know Your Rights workshops through Moya. Now I received an email last week that Moya said that they are restarting Know Your Rights workshop, but also to the council members' point, a lot of the funding goes to nonprofits that then work across different communities to the areas with the most need, I would assume, because everybody should know their rights, but it's certain neighborhoods need that information a little bit more because of the language barriers and their proximity to that issue, right? So I'm not familiar with how that money is distributed to nonprofits and how they themselves action on it. But I think with like the council member's point, we could definitely use more to try different strategies, not just ad hoc nonprofit stuff, but also signage, working in different communities.
Coordination, yeah.
Online presences. Yeah.
I mean,
but I agree with you.
But it's a great insight. Like,
we're going to go to Ivy.
So is there any way to write resolutions with the interest of having legal workshops on the ground? Because when we say education, that's so broad. And I come from ACT UP, I have to caution when people say, know your rights, educate yourself, then there's no action. So, but if you have clinics, they're helping you with guardianship, they're helping you, like if you're trying to go to a clinic, that this is your right, and there's HIPAA in between, you have to have people on the ground, and that education is more tangible. Because there's so many friends of mine that are undocumented that through the years, with 30 years, I've been saying, you need to have guardianship. They won't take it seriously because they're just like, we're trying to make a living, everything is fine for now until something happens. So what I'm saying is, like, when you're on the ground doing the workshop that actually takes you through documentation, action, you're already learning what your rights are, but you're actually doing actions that actually protect you in a tangible way. So whether you're going to the bodega, have workshops done, that is like having actionable things, and how we fund that is really important, because we take so much time into messaging and blah, blah. That's how it looks like now, that there's a government that can take this overnight. So, we're talking about process. They're not talking about process.
So I appreciate that point. I think when we're thinking about a resolution, the question is, who is it to and what are we asking for? And so I think there's basically two sets of potential asks we could make vis-a-vis agents who would be responsive to us, because a resolution about wanting ICE to behave differently is not meaningful.
No.
But we can do a resolution, and we could do both. But it sounds like the two possible paths are, one, something about resources in the city budget for very discrete, high value interventions. And that we could list specifically things like legal workshops. We could list specifically signage at faith institutions and hospitals, or we could give those as examples, but basically say that the budget must comprehensively resource a response to what we're seeing from federal policy. I think the second thing on the Rikers issue, the intervention isn't with ICE, but it's with the mayor, because the question is whether the mayor will sanction ICE going to Rikers against the laws that have been passed by the city council to institute the set of sanctuary provisions that the council member was talking about. So I think we could have a resolution on that front that isn't specifically about Rikers, but is reasserting our support for the set of local laws that make up our sanctuary provisions, and imploring the mayor and agencies like Moya to act in full alignment with those legal requirements and not reduce enforcement of those sanctuary laws given pressure from the federal government. And that could gesture towards the Rikers piece without being specifically about that. So curious what folks think about that.
They're both good.
Yeah, I like both.
But can you also your frame on that
Yeah.
was very nice, the second one.
Yeah.
And why not reference Rikers, for instance, Rikers Island?
Yeah.
So it is named there in the bigger picture.
So I think, go ahead.
I would say for that second one, I think, Arturo, what you brought up just got me thinking, and maybe a little bit of what you said about Moya and the IOSA.
Oh, so
That was a tough acronym. But I feel like I would like more information on what some of the nonprofits feel about how are those agencies functioning today? Has the mayor basically stopped them from operating? Are they doing anything? Is that where the centralization? So I'm a little reticent to pass a resolution calling out those, because we didn't get that in her testimony, and we just don't know.
I know a lot. I mean, they're doing a lot of Know Your Rights, all the nonprofits.
No, not the nonprofit, sorry,
I guess Zach is saying, how
city
critical should we be of the city, since we only have a limited perspective on the administration's response? And I think our resolution could speak to requests of the mayor and the agencies without implying that they're
Yeah.
being deficient.
Yeah, I agree.
But saying that I think this could be one resolution that's
Yeah.
basically about, given these things that we've seen from the new administration, given these realities of our values and commitments, given this background of our laws, we as a committee and as a board want to see full resourcing of interventions for immigrant communities in New York, and two, full execution of our sanctuary laws by the mayor and the administration and the agencies to comport with the legal requirements they have and not
Yeah.
But
I would
the
say,
legal
though-
thing is really important, I think. I mean, state that.
Yeah.
Because I think New York City does pay people to be lawyers, to protect people.
Yeah.
But we don't give them and we need more of them, especially on this issue. So it is a city obligation.
And I would say that their education is deficient because we all read the newspaper pretty regularly. We're on, I learned a lot tonight. I didn't know most of this. So if we don't know it and we keep ourselves informed, I mean, you knew it, they're not doing a good job.
I mean,
We could reach every single one of us. They do it, we get that thing about our voting rights. The same thing that they mail for voting rights, they should be sending out for immigration rights.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
That's a good comparison.
And so they have there's capacity.
I like the way that you framed here are the givens and
Yeah.
here are the things that we'd like to see.
Yeah.
If the committee is comfortable, I'm happy to take on writing the resolution with input from everybody. And I've written thorough notes, so
Yeah.
I'll try to incorporate as much as we can. And we'll do like the regular editing as well.
Right. Yes, I think.
And I also, no rush, because I do want to do this right.
Well, I think Ivy, I want to, one thing, I wasn't sure, and maybe you all heard more clearly from the council member about the timing. She seemed to
the
indicate
budget,
that the budget
Yeah, you're right.
decision I don't think they're going to vote on the city budget in the next 2 weeks. But the question is our intervention by passing something at the April 17th full board meeting,
Right.
is that timely vis-a-vis that discussion?
I think so.
Yeah.
The budget.
Yeah.
I think the end of the month is
So
like a
pass it.
fixed deadline, but there's much negotiation.
Yeah.
Sorry, Ivy, go ahead.
Water.
So I think that in the resolution, something that we need to discuss really quickly is the arms of like where education and healthcare intersect, right? Because when we look at, well, what the mayor's office, blah, 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 and their money, people that already get money, we need to know that they're stepping up on that. For example, are the schools ready for this? They're not. Like this woman got arrested, she knows her right, and now she's somewhere else. So we know that education, that I know for a fact with my kids going to school, principal letting in the police, once they're in there, if that principal is not up to her education level, she lets them in, that's it. You can call the lawyers, you can't get them out. But so we have a lot of that stuff that the community is not ready to, that's absolutely not ready. It's the same thing with hospitals. City clinics should show the communities that they're educated enough to not let ICE in. So that we need to call upon, they already have that in their budget. Not just from now, all along they've had that money that they need to be educated and up to par. So they're not doing their part. So we need to somehow figure out a way to have that resolution saying you're funded to protect or to function and to protect community. What is your plan and how are you educating yourself, and show us that feedback.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure that the schools are not doing their part.
But I'm saying,
I know that there are people in Chinatown who are actually making sure that every principal knows, don't let ICE in. And I know.
Exactly. So we need that across the board. That should be,
Allocation of funding is no guarantee of proper execution of the program.
Exactly.
So in the resolution, when you say it specifically, ensure that XYZ.
By the way, nobody has been arrested in a church in New York City yet. Nobody.
Yeah, I mean, I think that raises some outstanding questions I had from the presentation and just probably from lack of time. One was, I did ask what have we seen in terms of increased enforcement and increase arrest or deportations. And I don't think that we heard that. Maybe that information is available elsewhere, but I think that should be included. Whether it's happening or not, it's obviously having a chilling effect on a lot of behaviors and is damaging in itself and is damaging where it is happening. But I think getting our arms around, what actually have we seen in terms of differences in enforcement? And then the other thing that we didn't really get to talk about that I was going to ask about if we had more time, which is kind of like any emphasis on know your rights implies that rights are being respected. And I think like we're in a moment where it doesn't matter if you know your rights because the federal administration isn't acting in accordance with them. And so that's really, I think that's more than we can handle in a resolution. But I do think the question is like,
Maybe next month.
yeah. But that's my question for the council is like, what are you doing about all of the extra legal activities that we're seeing that are, not just that are implicating green card holders and people who have not been, accused of a crime, let alone convicted of one.
We can ask them to, commit to themselves, like putting the, city attorney or any kind of like, legal representation to support people in those situations. I mean, that's part of it, right?
I think I think that's a swing that we don't have a complete picture for. I'm not sure if the city attorneys even have jurisdiction or if the attorney general has jurisdiction. I think that's a very complex question that I don't think we should wade into at the moment.
Ivy?
The one thing I would, I don't know, advocate is that we are not in the position as business as usual of saying things like, we would like to see data. Like, screw that, because this is the kind of stuff that, holds us back in whatever situation. It's like, we know what this looks like and we should just plan ahead. Because that whole thing, we need a study, blah, blah, blah. Please, 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 please don't do that.
I mean, that's not the implication of my question. It was more, what should we most forcefully be responding to, and how can we bring to bear the reality on the ground to our advocacy? But yeah, point well taken.
Aren't they planning on?
Well, I think, do we need?
There's a lot of talk
Probably
with
should circulate something.
essentially.
Well, I think we technically need to vote on it now. If we want to have a resolution in the board minutes, or else it's just a report. That's why we.
Mark says yes. That's right.
Yes.
Then we will vote on the
contours
of the resolution that we have discussed and contemplated. I think Valerie's trying our attention to the education resolution, but go ahead, Valerie.
Yeah, that's it. You got it. I was just putting that in there for reference, in case anyone hadn't seen that. I know there's some overlap of this committee and that one, I believe. So anyways, just sharing the resource.
Well,
that looks good. That looks good. Something like that. I think those are the path. But maybe we should have the ACLU like come over and tell us, what are you doing on the ground for different, that we can tangibly understand.
Yeah. I mean, maybe it might be hard, but I still think we should do the resolution. It would help if we could continue bringing some more speakers to bring some different angles.
Maybe we can get Moya to come by. Now that they're.
So in terms of the invite, I think that's also really important that when we have invitations out, let's be very specific what we want to hear, because we don't want to hear the whole program, because we kind of understand what the whole program, because the whole program, we can get feedback. It looks like this. We have, unsecure residents right now. So we know that. So we have to be very specific when we invite people. We would like you to tell us 5 actions are happening right now in response to the current administration. Like, I want speed dating that is very efficient at this moment.
Did you have?
Only to best leverage these people's times, but we don't do it. Do we ever do combined meetings like CB1, 2, and 3? Do we have a forum on it? We have done.
Not all the time, but we have done.
So maybe if we're going to do that, I think to hit at least 1, 2, and 3.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. Yeah.
Or we can invite other CBs as well, so that we don't because the planning and that kind of stuff could be like, It's quite a planning.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna take a vote on the contours of the resolution that we have discussed. So all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Recusals? I've always wanted to say that. Is there any discussion about the Red Door Place? My instinct is that we memorialize what they said, we put it in a report, and we follow up with Botcher's team and the bid and make some connections. Does that sound right?
Right,
Yeah, I think report and we can, we'll log it for the district needs statement. They obviously need to come up with a number. That would be helpful. So we have something to put into that.
Yes. Yes, agreed, Valerie. Any other new business? No? Okay, then we will adjourn this meeting. Thank you.
Good job, Ryder and Arturo.
So much.
Well
Thank
done.
you, Ryder. Excellent.
Thanks, folks.